Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Balanced Vibes podcast. This is your host, Kirsten, and thank you so much for being here listening to my thoughts on hormones and fat loss today. So, yes, this is what we're going to talk about, understanding your hormones for fat loss and muscle gains. Okay, so there seem to be two types of people in the fitness world, those who talk about dieting and losing weight and losing fat. There seem to be the ones who say that calories are the only thing that matter, and then the other group of people who say that hormones is the only thing or are the only things that matter. So now the question is, who is right? And I would say that they're both right. So let's first talk about calories a little bit. Of course, when we have a weight loss and fat loss goal, we have to be in a calorie deficit in order to get there. Now, this is, of course, possible for a person who is relatively healthy, who is hormonally healthy, who has not been yo-yo dieting, and is now ready for a little bit of a cut so that she can lose body weight and body fat. So yes, there needs to be a calorie deficit in order to get there. However, if this person has already done a lot of yo-yo dieting or has been eating low calories for a long time, then this person isn't just hormonally there, it's not healthy enough, so she cannot lose weight. And this is what we know as weight loss resistance. What this person has to do, and I've talked about this a lot, is that she first has to increase her calories back up to a place where she's now healthy. She has to stay there for a little bit to let the metabolism fully recover and heal, and then she can do a calorie deficit. So calorie deficit, yes, it is needed in order to lose body fat and body weight. And this is where a healthy person starts from, right? So now the second part of it is hormones. There are people who say that hormones are the only things that matter, but this is not entirely true as well, because without calorie deficit, if you have healthy hormones, but we don't do calorie deficit, then you're not going to lose body weight and body fat. So now hormones, of course, are important. And the reason why somebody who has already done a lot of dieting and cut her calories and maybe beat herself up with too much exercise, the reason why she cannot lose weight anymore is that her hormones are imbalanced. And of course, there are also other reasons for hormone imbalances. Overtraining and undereating aren't the only ones, but this is just one example of why hormones also matter if we have a weight loss and fat loss goal. So let's talk about it today. And when it comes to fat loss and fat gain, actually, let's put it this way, one of the biggest concerns that women have is that belly fat, right? So why am I gaining belly fat? And sometimes it can even be the case that a person is actually skinny or doesn't have anything excess, when you look at her, or that doesn't have excess body weight, but she does have a noticeably high amount of belly fat. And this is exactly what hormones tell us. So hormonal health determines where the body fat is stored. And we get there in a little bit, but just to kind of quickly say, for example, when we have a good hormonal balance, then typically a female will have like a smaller midsection and larger breasts and larger butt, because this is the hourglass shape. So this is kind of like the typical female shape. And this is what can tell us that this person is probably hormonally can be pretty balanced. So today we're talking about 4 hormones, and I'm going to give you just like a basic understanding of how they work for fat loss. And of course, I want to mention that no hormone ever works in isolation. They are a team together, and what one team member does definitely impacts the performance of the whole team. So it's not true that you can just fix your estrogen or just fix your cortisol or anything like this. Everything always works together. So that's why it's important that we take care of our overall health to improve that balance and make sure that we actually have that fat loss result that we want to have. Before I get into those 4 hormones that we're going to talk about more today, one big reason why we tend to store more belly fat is definitely stress. And just recently, I have done several episodes on stress and how that can get on your way when you have a weight loss, fat loss goals. So I recommend that you check out 3 podcast episodes that I have done recently. So they are number 135, unexpected sources of stress and how they can impact your physique. Then 137, which is why too much exercise is bad for weight loss. This, by the way, is one of my more popular podcasts based on the number of downloads. And also 140, how stress prevents weight loss and 3 ways to beat it. And you will learn from all of these episodes that it's not only the physical stress that impacts you, there are also other factors like your mindset, the way you think, and all that, and how we can literally think ourselves to a really stressed out state, and what can we then do about it to manage that. So make sure to check out the episodes 135, 137, and 140, also either before you continue listening to this one or maybe after this one. Okay, so now let's talk about the 4 hormones that definitely have impact on how we store our body fat, and especially if you're somebody who tends to store a little bit more in your midsection. And of course, hormonal balance is one thing. The other thing is also our genetics. So that's definitely part of it. I know this for me personally. I don't naturally have that hourglass shape that is kind of seen as the typical, like the female perfect or ideal shape. And I can really tell that, like when I look at my mom, for example. So she doesn't have that shape either. So a lot of it is also genetics, but it's still important that we take care of our hormonal balance too, so that we can just be healthier and also can have this better body composition that we want to have. All right, so first hormone that we definitely have to talk about is cortisol. Cortisol, of course, is known as the stress hormone, and it's absolutely needed to produce cortisol, right? So don't think that cortisol is always bad. Cortisol is actually great because that will help you get ready when you are in a stressful situation, get ready to get out of that situation, right? But the thing is that a lot of people are under perceived stress. A lot of times there's no actual threat or danger or animal chasing you, very rare nowadays, I think, in modern societies. So we are actually able to create this amount of, like, huge amount of cortisol with just our thoughts, with the work pressure, with just like internal stuff. And we are really, really good at this. And now women who are more prone to stress and more likely to have that type of stress, and maybe don't have the tools to deal with this type of stress very well, they definitely can create this hormonal balance in their body, and they're constantly in high stressed state. They also have high levels of blood glucose, and they also may end up with high levels of insulin because the body is just creating more insulin to make sure that this blood glucose gets into the cells and doesn't get stored. But now the problem is that when you have high cortisol and high insulin, then this is basically the worst combination that you can have when we're talking about your belly fat, because your belly fat really likes that combination. Or should we say that this combination definitely triggers more belly fat storage. So this is definitely something to keep in mind, because it's not only about your weight and it's not only about your belly fat. Also, if we have this combination of high cortisol and then high insulin, because like I said, your body has high levels of blood glucose, which then triggers more insulin. Now there is high level of insulin too. This can also have a really bad downstream effect on your thyroid. So a lot of people who have that may have low thyroid function. And also, of course, your adrenals are going to be overworked and bumping up more and more cortisol all the time. So this is really not a great combination. And this is definitely one of the reasons why you might be carrying more belly fat. So high cortisol coming from high levels of stress combined with high insulin, then this is the combination that you don't want to have. So you have to learn how to manage this. And later in the episode, I will give you 10 steps what you can do for better hormonal balance. All right, next, let's talk about estrogen. So the right amount of estrogen is what we're looking for, because like I said, this is what gives us women this hourglass shape, where we're kind of like smaller in the middle, and we have storing more like in hips and breast area. So that's the hourglass shape. So when we have right amount of estrogen relative to progesterone, so this is a good thing, because right amount of estrogen also means actually better insulin sensitivity. And why do we want to have better insulin sensitivity? I just mentioned that actually in my previous point. When we have good insulin sensitivity, that means that our cells kind of open up so that the blood glucose can get in. So insulin is kind of like the key that opens the cells so that the glucose can get in. And when we are sensitive to insulin, that the key fits in the lock, right? So it opens the cells and lets it in. But if we are insulin resistant, or in other words, we have poor insulin sensitivity, then it's almost like the key doesn't fit and the cells don't open. And then we end up with high levels of blood sugar and high levels of insulin, which I just also covered. So right amount of estrogen will make us more insulin sensitive. So the other thing, and this is really interesting thing, is that even when we are in a calorie deficit, but we have a right, normal, healthy amount of estrogen, then we lose more body fat and we preserve more muscle. This is really interesting to know. And not too long ago, I did an episode why we have to lift weights when we are in a calorie cut. So the idea here was that we always want to preserve as much muscle mass as possible, even when we are cutting, because we want the cut to come from body fat mostly, right? Nobody wants to lose fat. Nobody wants to lose muscle. You should never want to lose any muscle, right? So if we have a good, proper, balanced amount of estrogen, then when we are in deficit, we are able to lose more fat and less muscle, which is very important for your goals. Now, next, we got to talk about progesterone too, because what we always are looking for is the balance between estrogen and progesterone. And when there is a nice balance, then this will offset the effect that cortisol has on the body. So the cortisol has kind of like this storing effect, right? I already talked about it. High cortisol, then we tend to store more in the midsection. If we have a nice balance between estrogen and progesterone, then the storing effect will be offset by this nice balance between these two nice hormones. And also, if we are constantly stressed out, always coming back to stress, if we are constantly stressed out, then our body has to make a choice, whether it's going to create more progesterone or cortisol. And because these two are made from the same material, basically, it always chooses cortisol, because your body perceives, or I would rather say your brain perceives, that you are under a lot of stress. What should we do? Or we're not going to create progesterone, we're going to create cortisol, because clearly this person needs cortisol in order to handle this stress. Because remember, cortisol is really helpful in a stressful situation, when it's actually a stressful situation, right? But it's not so helpful if it is, for example, perceived stress. So this balance between estrogen and progesterone is really important. You may have heard about estrogen dominance. And this is basically a situation where there's just too much estrogen compared to your progesterone. It doesn't actually have to necessarily even mean that your estrogen by itself is way too high. What really matters is it too high in comparison to progesterone? And if this is, it means that your progesterone is too low and you have hormonal imbalance there. And of course, there are several very uncomfortable estrogen dominant symptoms. You may have very sore breasts. You may have very heavy bleeding. You may have fibroids. There are so many negative health kind of effects that come from estrogen dominance, but there's definitely things that you can do about it. And lastly, let's talk about testosterone too, when it comes to our fat loss. So of course, testosterone is mainly known as the main male sex hormone, but of course women have it too, and women need it too, of course in way smaller quantities than men. Now, testosterone, of course, is needed for muscle building, for sure. It's needed for a couple of other things too. For example, it's needed for drive and like getting going and having goals. Like if you have a good amount of testosterone, the right amount of testosterone, this is how you probably feel, and you also will build muscle nicely. But if you have too much testosterone, then that can also disrupt with your estrogen and progesterone balance. And this is not good, because it will also create more belly fat. This is what you don't want, because now this balance is not there anymore. And for example, women with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, they tend to have higher levels of testosterone, and that can then show as more belly fat. And so we have to make sure that the testosterone levels are also in check and that they don't get too high. So for example, if you have high insulin, which we already talked about before, then that can make your ovarian cells to create more testosterone. And that, again, if these levels get too high, can show as belly fat. So now we have covered briefly the 4 most important hormones and why we need to have them balanced if we want to have like good fat loss and good body composition, and when we don't want to have like store a lot of belly fat. So we understand now that we have to keep these things in balance. We have to manage our stress. We want to have good estrogen progesterone balance, and we don't want to have too high testosterone. We want to have enough testosterone but not too high. So what are some of the action steps that you can start taking if you maybe are dealing with a little too much belly fat, you tend to store it there, you are wondering what to do about it. Now, I'm going to give you 10 tips. And the first one is lift weights, but don't overdo it. Really do traditional strength training, which I'm talking about a lot on this podcast, but don't overdo it. Stressing your body is not going to do any good if you already have this issue, you have this hormonal imbalance going on. But you do want to put a little bit of stress on the body so that it can get stronger and you can have more muscle mass, but and you also can have more insulin sensitivity. It's really important, and that is something that you get from higher muscle mass, of course, but you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to go to the gym like 6 days a week and kill yourself there. This is absolutely necessary. And I know that the temptation is, of course, there. You think that I have to do more to get rid of this belly fat, but you have to understand that sometimes it is really a hormonal imbalance that's causing it, and it's not about burning more calories. So number 1 was lift weights, but don't overdo it. And generally, I recommend that you do about 3 workouts a week. This is plenty, and do really good traditional strength training with plenty of rest breaks between the sets. The second thing is take relaxing walks. Okay, so that's the neat movement that I talk about quite a bit here. But it's important that this walking is relaxing. And I would really love to see you do it outside, not on the treadmill while you're checking your emails. This is not what we're looking for. We want you to be able to walk outside. If there's some sun, hopefully there is some sun. I don't know. I'm in Arizona. I'm lucky. But hopefully wherever you are, you get some sun too. If not, still go outside and, stop and smell the roses literally. Like, this is what your walk should be like, because this has really good effects on your cortisol. Of course, it will calm your body down. It calms your nervous system down. And it, of course, also increases your calorie expenditure, but in a gentle way, not in the workout way, right? So take relaxing walks. I typically say 10,000 steps a day, or maybe an hour a day. If you don't want to count your steps, track them. Take an hour walk every day and take it slowly and really enjoy the environment around you. And this will be great benefit. This will give you great benefits for sure. Then the next point, third point, is that make sure that you get rid of that excess estrogen. And this is really, really, really important, because I already mentioned when estrogen is too high in comparison to progesterone, then this can be one of the reasons why you're storing that belly fat. So what are some of the important things here? How do you get rid of excess estrogen? Well, one of the things is definitely that you have to poop daily, at least once a day, but it's a lot better if you do it twice. And if this is not happening, maybe you're dealing with constipation. There can be a lot of reasons why you are dealing with constipation, but it is important that you then work with somebody. I don't recommend that you just take random supplements that you don't even know if they're good or not, and just buy something because somebody said so. I would definitely work with someone who knows what kind of maybe digestive enzymes to give you, or maybe you're dealing with low stomach acid and maybe you would benefit from some apple cider vinegar shots before your meals. So make sure that you know that you're doing, and you have to start pooping better. This is important. And of course, overall detoxing of your liver. So when I say detoxing, I'm not talking about doing juice cleanses or extended water fast. What I'm talking about more is like getting rid of the excess stuff in your liver, helping your liver, supporting your liver. And I personally have recently started using castor oil packs, which was recommended to me by my practitioner. And it's really, it's supposed to really help you to kind of just get your liver in a better shape and get rid of the excess estrogen, also help you to eliminate better. It's supposed to help you with hormonal balance. So you may have heard about seed cycling, but there's a lot of new information coming out that doesn't actually support seed cycling that much. but they say that actually castor oil packs is a safer version of basically the same thing, getting your hormones balanced. So this is something that you can definitely experiment with. I am doing this myself too. This is my first month, and maybe I will do an update later, tell you what benefits I have seen. Right now it's a little bit too soon to say, but I can keep you updated if you are interested in it. So making sure that you get rid of excess estrogen and that you support your liver. So this is very important too. Number 4, the fourth action step that you can take is to take lots and lots and lots rest and recovery time. This is more important than you probably realize. And it's also more important than training super hard every single day. I know that you're probably very dedicated. I know that you want to get your certain number of workouts in that you committed to, but when you're tired, you're going to rest. And also, what are you doing in between days when you're not working out? Are you actually resting? Are you doing some activities that make you feel better, that are restorative? So you can think about things like, I already mentioned walking, but can we do some stretching? Can we get a massage? Can we just put our feet up and do nothing? Can we read a nice book? Can we meditate? I meditate every single morning. I do something like this every single day because we have to calm our system down, and the system is stressed if you have hormonal imbalances going on. It's not that, oh, this person is like super healthy and doesn't have any issues and she's doesn't have any stress, but she has hormonal imbalances. No, hormonal imbalances are definitely a sign of stress. So we have to figure out how to incorporate more rest and recovery activities if really kind of getting rid of some of this belly fat is our goal. And not only that, of course, hormonal imbalances are not fun. They have so many other ways how they manifest as well. But in this episode, we're talking about fat loss. So that's why I'm mentioning it. All right. The 5th action step that we can start taking is eating enough food. And I know that this also sounds counterintuitive because you're thinking, I'm storing so much belly fat, this gross, I want to get rid of this, blah, 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 I'm going to cut, I'm going to cut, I'm going to cut. But you may not be ready for this at all. And this is not the right way to do it, because all you're doing when you're cutting in this situation is that you're putting yourself under even more stress, because dieting is always stress. That's why I mentioned in the beginning of this episode that yes, of course, calorie deficit, but we start calorie deficit only the person who's already healthy. Because if you're not, and if you have these pretty significant hormonal imbalances going on, then cutting your calories further is not going to be helpful. So I would say at least eat at maintenance. Figure out your maintenance calories, and I can help you with that too. I help all my clients with that, whatever their goal is, cutting or maintaining or bulking. We have to figure out what your maintenance calories are and just eat enough food. Don't cut right now, right? Let's get your hormonal imbalances sorted out, and then you can do it. The 6th point that I have, if you have that belly fat going on and this hormonal imbalance is going on, is to eat regular meals, okay? So I don't want you to skip meals or think that you have to cut. I already mentioned that earlier. But eat regularly. Let's say like every 3-4 hours, have something, and definitely have a high protein meal and high fiber meal. So I recommend at least 30 grams of protein per meal, every meal, and most cases I would say even more, but 30 if you maybe are just a beginner getting started with this, and maybe you have 3-4 meals a day, that's going to give you like 90 to 120 grams of protein, and this is really the bare minimum. Now maybe maybe you need more protein. Let's say that 1 gram per 1 pound of your body weight, and let's say that you are 150 pounds maybe, then you should aim for close to 150 grams, or let's say 140, 150. This is what should be your goal. Unless you are very overweight, you have a lot of weight, that like excess weight, then you don't have to eat like 200 grams of protein. But still, you want to eat high protein meal, and you also want to have enough fiber in your diet. My recommendation generally is to eat at least 25 grams of fiber a day, and that's also really helpful in keeping your bowels regular, which we already talked about. It's so important to get rid of that excess estrogen as well. All right. The 7th point is please stop doing extended fasts and low carb diets. It's not going to be helpful for you. You're not going to fix that situation by doing extended fasts, okay? Normal overnight fast, which is typically around 12 hours, is plenty. Please don't stress your body, your system even more that is already stressed by doing like 18 hours, 19 hours, 20-hour fasts, and then also cutting out the carbs, and or don't do these things. They are just putting more stress on the body. Also, going on a low carb diet for a very long time is also associated with low thyroid function. So we're throwing this in there, and then you start seeing hair loss and skin issues, and cold heat tolerance is like non-existent. So you're going to create only more problems if you are throwing these things into the mix as well. Now, the eighth step that I have for you is to eat whole and real foods as close to nature as possible. So you can think vegetables, you can think meats, you can think eggs, you can think dairy, get it raw if possible. Please don't think that you have to kick out the red meat because meat is bad. No, it's not. It's very healthy. It has high nutritional value. Also, eggs. If somebody tells you that eggs and butter and meat make you sick, don't believe them. It is not true. You need these things. They are very nutrient dense, and I'm extra proud of you if you're able to throw in some organ meats. I personally eat liver every single day because it is very unhealthy. What I was just going to say unhealthy. It is very, very healthy. And some people even say it's nature's multivitamin. So eat whole and real foods as much as possible. Think, did it come from nature? And of course, have room for this fun stuff. You know, I always talk about that. Don't get so anal and so restrictive with your diet that you cannot now have a piece of chocolate or I don't know, like a little brownie or whatever you want to have. You can have these things, have it daily if you want to, but they should be relatively small percentage of what you eat. Mostly eat real and whole foods. All right, action step number 9 is to clean up your environment from xenoestrogens. So xenoestrogens are basically estrogen-like, how would I even say? So they have a similar structure to estrogen, but they are not real estrogen. So they can trick your body into thinking that there is excess estrogen. So where are these things coming from? Xenoestrogens, for example, plastic. So if you drink out of plastic bottles a lot, or if you store your food in plastic, or you heat your food, microwave in a plastic container, this is not good. So this is one place where you can get how you can create more of those estrogen imbalances. Then, of course, water. You want to drink pure, clean water, and tap water is usually not the best for it. So use some kind of filtration system. We use Berkey at home. We also have a shower head with filtration. So because water also gets on your skin, and that impacts your skin too. So clean water as much as possible. One big thing, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but for example, receipts at the store are one of the worst things that you can do. So if possible, don't touch them, or wash your hands quickly after you have touched them. At home, use air purifier. They are not that expensive, but they are very, very helpful to keep your home air clean. And then also anything scented like dryer sheets. We, for example, completely stopped using all dryer sheets. We found more like natural, healthier laundry detergents. We don't do any air fresheners, anything like this. When we can, perfumes, absolutely not, nothing like this. So unscented items, only use those. This is my recommendation. And of course, skincare. What do you put on your skin? There's so much junk in our skincare. I personally have used Beautycounter for, wow, a long time now. I think I started using it at the end of 2019, and I'm still using it. I'm not planning to change that anytime soon. If you're interested in healthier skincare that doesn't have all this junk added to it, then I will put the link in the show notes too, where you can buy Beautycounter products or reach out to me if you have any questions about it. And of course, another big one where we can get a lot of those not so friendly xenoestrogens is birth control. So that's also something to be aware of. So stay away from that kind of stuff as much as possible to make sure that your hormones stay healthy. And then the last action step that I have for you is to calm your mind and regulate your nervous system. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, stress isn't only, long-term fasting or overdoing cardio or stressful boss or stressful traffic. Stress is also self-created inside of our heads, our heads, literally. And when we now don't take time to calm our system down, take breaks, just breathe, just stare outside the window, simple things like that, then that can also throw our hormones off. It's very, very possible. You guys, we can literally think ourselves into a stressed out state. So I really want you to treat that as uh, what's the right word that I'm looking for? It's as important as the other 9 steps that I just mentioned to you. So calm your mind and regulate your nervous system, and then find ways to kind of relax a little bit more. It all matters. So I hope that this episode was helpful for you. A little bit of overview of how the hormones work, especially if you have maybe problems with belly fat and you're gaining and you don't understand why, and you're tempted to just jump into like another diet or tighten up your exercise, start doing more stuff, eating less, then these things may not be the answer. The answer might be to balance your hormones, and by overstressing yourself, you're definitely not balancing your hormones any further. So I hope that this episode was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can always leave me a comment here on YouTube. You can also reach out via email. You can definitely send me a DM on Instagram or wherever else I am hanging out. So thanks so much for being here today. I hope this was helpful for you, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.